1, 2.
Platform, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Speaker mic, can you hear me?
Hi, Mario. Yes, I can hear you.
Madam Speaker,
Recording in progress.
There will now be a moment of silent prayer and meditation. May we be seated? Order, honorable members. Once again, I would like to remind you that the first bow I make is to the maize with the sergeant in arms, and then the second one is on the right, and the third is on the left. I always see the confusion a bit when I'm starting, but nonetheless, welcome.
Madam Speaker, please also bow to the
Ready,
Lord.
honorable, ready.
Please bow to the Lord as well. Thank you.
Honorable Reddy, we're missing you in the house because you are missing television. Order. Order, honorable members. I would like to wish Honorable Des van Rooyen well as he assumes his new task as the Chief Whip of the opposition. Order, honorable members. Honorable Mondli, can you please take your seat? Honorable members, order, Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to know if there was an indication whether it would last beyond the weekend.
Order, that's not a point of order. I have order. Honorable members, would like to welcome Honorable van Rooyen, who's not only the Chief Whip of Umkhonto weSizwe Party, but also as a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament. We've just come back with him, Honorable Dlagude, Honorable Clark, and other members who are here to the walkabout that we're doing to see progress on the rebuild of Parliament. And we would want to assure you that indeed a lot of work is being done in the rebuilding of Parliament and Old Assembly, and also the offices of members, which we had to, in agreement with the Minister of Finance, rebuild in order to ensure that we've got enough offices for all the members of Parliament. Honorable members, can I ask 10 of the lights? I'm not sure what's happening. Honorable member, is not load shedding. It might be load reduction, but it's not load shedding. Honorable members, the only question in the order paper today is questions addressed to Minister in the cluster 4 economics. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, among others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member or any other designated member from that party. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the executive, we will proceed to the next question on the order paper. The first question has been asked by Honorable N.L. Hlazo-Webster to the Minister of Employment and Labor. The question is whether her department conducted any recent assessment or a complied data on the prevalence and impact of unfair pay practices in the Republic. If not, why not? If so, what do the findings reveal about the scale and causes of pay inequity across sectors, and which groups are the most affected by the disparities, particularly along the lines of gender, race, and age? I've been informed that the Deputy Minister will be answering the question on behalf of the Minister. Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The response to the question, Speaker, is that it is significant to highlight that the unfair pay is prohibited by various labor laws. Unfair pay is regarded as an unfair labor practice under the Labor Relations Act of 1995. Pay or wages are part of the terms and conditions of employment, and as such, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act of 1997 protects employees against any unfair term and conditions of employment, which is inclusive of pay. The National Minimum Wage Act of 2018 advances economic development by improving the wages of the lowest paid workers and protect workers from unreasonably low wages. In particular, the Employment Equity Act of 1998, as amended, contains specific provisions on equal pay for work of equal value, and requires employers to eliminate any unfair discrimination in employment policies and practices, inclusive of remuneration and benefit policies in their workplaces. Furthermore, Section 27 of the EEA requires all the designated employers that employ 50 and more employees to submit annually their income differential statements to the National Minimum Wage Commission, reporting on the remuneration and benefits received by each employee on each occupational level of the employer's workforce. However, to be specific, no recent assessments have been conducted by the National Minimum Wage Council on the prevalence and impact of unfair pay practices due to poor data quality challenges identified in the income differential data submitted by the employers in the previous year. The EEA form, which is an income differential data collection tool, has since been reviewed and aligned to the latest EE amendments and the amendments of the Companies Act to improve the quality of income differential data reported by employers. This revised EEA4 form was published in April 2025, and the employers are currently busy submitting their 2025 EEA4 forms, starting from 1 September 2025 until 15 January 2026. Thereafter, the National Minimum Wage Committee will analyze the EEA4 data and advise the Minister of Employment and Labor accordingly as mandated by Section 27 of the EEA. Then there are no findings because no recent assessment has been conducted due to the poor income pay data quality submitted by employers. 2, it is only after the assessment of analysis. It is only the assessment or analysis process of the 2025 income differential data by the National Minimum Wage Committee that any pronouncement can be made on which groups are the most affected by the pay disparities, particularly along the lines of gender and race. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Honorable N.L. Hlazo-Webster.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I think what's clear from your response is that while there is policy and there's law in place, you yourself concede that even the data that is submitted is not of the quality that would actually ensure, and that you'd be able to stand with confidence to say today that there aren't unfair pay practices that are taking place. So given that, and given the historic inequalities that we have in our country and the current entrenchment of those by unfair pay practices. Would you say that where unfair pay practices are identified, they should be outlawed? Would you agree with that? And would you then, Minister, Deputy Minister, support an amendment to strengthen law to that effect, to ensure that unfair pay practices are then not continuing? Because the reality is they are, even in spite of current legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think, Honorable Speaker, while I might be tempted to agree with what has been raised as the question, but I think it will be prudent not to pronounce on this matter before we get the employers to bring back the new form that we have sent to them to fill and respond to us as the department, which will give us the actual status of the matter we are talking about. This is going to be happening just now in 2026. Then for us to be able to talk about something that we are saying it's credible, we'll be waiting for that report and the analysis that we are going to be doing as the department. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable B.M. Maneli.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thanks for the response, Deputy Minister. I think the question to supplement here is how will the department ensure the effectiveness of the Employment Equity Amendment Act in enforcing and addressing pay inequalities, and what additional measures or policy initiatives are being considered to strengthen its impact on reducing disparities across gender, race, and age groups, given the non-compliance that we always have with regard to the laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is important to highlight that the justifications for non-compliance for the principle of equal pay for equal value will form part of the findings after the analysis process of the 2025 EEA4 data by the National Minimum Wage Committee, because these justifications are included in the new revised EEA4 form, Honorable Speaker. But the department also is a custodian of the National Minimum Wage Act. Essentially, this law safeguards the interest of workers as far as wages are concerned. No worker should be paid below the minimum wage regardless of gender, race, or age. The department ensures that the National Minimum Wage Act is enforced alongside the Employment Equity Act. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable T.J. Mugwile.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Good afternoon. I'll be taking the question on behalf of Honorable Mokweli. Minister, you say you do enforce the minimum wage, but there are sectors, especially the hospitality industry in this country, that favors the use of undocumented migrants in order to abuse them, pay them slave wages. So what specific action is your department taking to address this? Because this is what is fueling the hate against immigrants in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Yes, we acknowledge that the hospitality sector is one of the sectors where we have challenges as the country. The work that we have done as the department to try and deal with this in that sector is that we have partnered with the sector through their representative, where we are having some advocacy programs that we are going around the entire country to deal and enforce our labor laws, in particular when it comes to the national minimum wage. What we have done as well is that we are offering our services at the department to different sectors, not only hospitality sector, but targeting hospitality sector in particular and focusing on it. That's the first sector that we have started our advocacy program to try and deal with the issue of minimum wage, but also to make sure that we bring the stick and the carrot in making sure that we work together with the sector in trying to advance what we seek to achieve as the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Person.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. In the light of the ongoing concerns regarding unfair pay practices, what specific criteria is being applied by the department to justify these indifferences in remuneration? And what's the turnaround time that the employees can expect?
Deputy Minister.
Speaker, it is important to highlight that the justifications for non-compliance to the principle of equal pay for work of equal value will form part of the findings after the analysis process, as I've said earlier on when I was responding, of the 2025 EEA4 data by the NMWC, because these justifications are included in the revised EEA4A4 form. The department will only be in a position to draw conclusion on the justifications of non-compliance after the completion of the analysis of the process of the 2025 EEA form. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. We now move to question 1152, which has been asked by Honorable M. Bagram to the Minister of Employment and Labour. The question is about the legislative provisions that the government relies on regarding the quotas for employment. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Cabinet announced on the 28th of May 2025, Honorable Speaker, that it has approved both the National Labour Migration Policy 2025 White Paper and the Employment Services Amendment Bill 2021 for implementation and submission to Parliament. The ISAP introduces Chapter 3A to the Employment Services Amendment Act 2021 as it stands currently. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable M. Bagram.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, in other words, there's no legislation at present. Section 9 of the Constitution prohibits unfair discrimination, and yet your department has pushed for the Employment Equity Amendment Act, which introduces quotas at the cost for businesses of 10% of their revenue should they fail to comply. Targets which have to be met under threat of bankruptcy are not voluntary, Minister. They are quotas. Will you agree to suspend any regulations enforcing these quotas until the courts have ruled on their constitutionality? Thank you, Minister.
Deputy Minister.
I think, Honorable Speaker, on this question, I will answer just in one word or one sentence. There is no regulation that we are going to suspend. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable NLS Kwangwa.
Speaker, thank you very much. Minister, the 24th Commission for Employment Equity Annual Report 2023-2024 again lays bare government's failure to achieve genuine transformation in the workplace. 31 years into democracy and nearly 25 years since the Employment Equity Act came into effect, white males still dominate senior management positions across the country. And the situation, as you know, is worse in the Western Cape, where there's just simple refusal to transform and to ensure that all the demographics of our country are reflected in the top excellence of the private sector. Minister, when will your department move beyond reports and rhetoric to enforce the law with urgency and consequence, and what decisive measures will you implement to strengthen the inspectorate and hold non-compliant employers to account? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker. As the department, in terms of inspection and enforcement of all our labor laws, we work tirelessly every day. Our inspectors wake up every morning to go out and do the work of inspection and enforcement, doing it in an ethical way and a credible manner. Honorable Speaker, I can assure this House that every day we hold employers to account, those who are non-compliant. We are even reforming some of our labor laws to bite even more, to have harsher fines and be able to bite when it comes to those employers who are not complying with our labor laws. So we are going to continue working tirelessly as we have been doing and up our game in terms of inspection and enforcement to make sure that there is the level of compliance increasing. And we are focusing in Western Cape as well, in particular when it comes to hospitality sector, where we have some more challenges. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Daniel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Deputy Minister, the intended beneficiaries of legislation like the Employment Equity Act continue to suffer by the millions. I think we all know that. While your department's job-destroying policies are continuously, as the Minister termed it herself in this House, being shoved down our throats, all the while limiting the private sector's ability to create jobs. I'm really interested, Deputy Minister, to know when you, your department and your party and your minister finally come to terms with reality and realize the truth, which is that race-based legislation does not work. There's more than enough evidence to support that. What would your plan B be to fix what you've broken and finally uplift those millions of jobless South Africans into the dignity of sustainable employment? Because it's not happening at the moment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. We strongly don't believe that Employment Equity Act is a hindrance to job creation. We believe that it is addressing the previous challenges that we all know of, and those who believe that we should scrap the Employment Equity Act, I believe they are anti-progress. And for us, we believe we must move forward and implement it to the T so that we continue as a progressive government in its entirety, not the party. It's a government policy. So we are going to continue implementing it because we believe it's working. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ismail Musa.
Thank you, Chairperson. To achieve representation in terms of demographics at workplaces is a fundamental principle of the founding fathers of the liberation movement. This has not happened. So the need for quotas is a matter of last resort. Is there fans in legislation that will make the minister amend our laws, or must Al Jamaa submit a private member's bill if there are shortcomings? Thank you.
Deputy Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Unemployment rate is rising in the country, we all agree, and it has no prospect of declining if departments such as Employment and Labor will not do its part. Chair, I think, Honorable Speaker, I think in relationship to the national labor laws that you are having as the department, we believe that the reforms that you are currently embarking on are going to bring change and are going to assist the country in terms of addressing the challenges that we are faced with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move to question 1093, which has been asked by Honorable S.W. Davis to the Minister of Agriculture. The question is, considering that the new 2024-29 multi-sector National Food and Nutrition Security Plan will be implemented as a single, coherent blueprint to realize the right to food, and given that October 2024 statistics, South Africa survey showed a high percentage of households not meeting food needs, what are the concrete targets over the specified timelines under the specified plan, and how will this department coordinate the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program and or Malisima program at district level to achieve the specified target? Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Member for the question. The Department of Agriculture is coordinating the National Food and Nutrition Security Plan, as the plan is a multi-sectoral one. Departments like the Department of Social Development will report on social protection measures. The Department of Health, which is responsible for nutrition, will report on nutrition indicators. and the Department of Basic Education, who are the custodians of the school nutrition program, will report on that, and entrepreneurial development will be reported on by the Department of Small Business Development. Currently, the plan is undergoing a theory of change process, and new targets are still being developed. This is being done in conjunction with the report issued by the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, who did a comprehensive deep dive into the successes, obstacles, and failures of the 2019-2024 plan. And obviously, these are now being taken into consideration as the new plan is developed. The Department of Agriculture is finalizing the targets as it relates to the second aspect with the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs and the South African Local Government Agency, SALGA. The strategic objective 2 outlined in that process is to be funded through the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program. It's worth in that regard also indicating that since the October 2024 statistics, the Department of Agriculture itself has released the National Food, Nutrition and Security Report, which was released during the course of this year, which provides for the very first time, a baseline report that allows us to drill down to assess food security at a district level. This will help us ensure that when these targets are set at a district level, in terms of the new plan, that they are able to work and measure off a baseline. As it relates to the Department of Agriculture, our main involvement in this is focusing on food production and availability of food. In that regard, the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan and the implementation thereof has seen an increase in production in the agricultural sector from 11% in 2015 to 13% in 2024. We've also seen, as a result of this plan, major jumps in production of maize, from 34% of production figures in 2015 to 65%. Soya from 72% to 80%. Wheat from 17% to 53%. Deciduous fruits from 17% to 49%. And tomatoes from 8% to 94%. The Department of Agriculture, for its part in the plan, will continue to focus on food production, the production of good, nutritious food, with a focus on indigenous crops and the inclusion of small-scale farmers in the production thereof. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. S.W. Davids.
Thank you, Speaker. I will take the question. Minister, what indicators and reporting frameworks are being used to measure the progress and impact of the joint implementation of the Food and Nutrition Security Plan, CASP, and ILIMA, LETSIMA, and what preliminary outcomes can the Minister report to date? And in light of any implementation challenges, what steps is the department taking to improve accountability and transparency in the deployment of CASP and ILIMA, LETSIMA funds under the Food and Nutrition Security Plan? And how are provinces held responsibility for meeting set targets? I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much for that. As I said, the plan is still in the final stages of development. It is going through the theory of change process, and again, taking into account the work done by the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, which did a top-to-toe evaluation of the effectiveness of the plan. And so at this stage, it's not possible to give those concrete targets, but once they are available, the plan will be tabled here in Parliament. I think it's also the implementation challenges have been highlighted quite clearly in the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation's assessment of the previous plan. And a large part of that focuses on a silo approach by government, not enough coordination between departments, and not enough accountability. And so it's very important that as we develop the new plan, that we address those shortcomings that were identified. We work at breaking down the silos and adopt a whole of government approach to dealing with this. As it relates to ILIMA, LETSIMA and CAS funding, we have been very, very clear from the beginning of the creation of the department in April of this year that what we need to do is to focus on greater transparency and accountability. The days of just simply handing over tranches of money to provinces and crossing your fingers and hoping that they're going to reach the beneficiaries have sadly come to an end. Sad for those who've been abusing those. There's a great deal of more transparency and accountability, and there will be measurement from the department nationally against projects submitted by the province, against performance. And we've also indicated that we would like to move towards a quarterly tranching down so that we can control and ensure that monies paid out are being spent according to the plans that have been submitted by the provinces, rather than just simply waiting for the end of the year and realizing that the money has not been spent, or it's been spent in the incorrect way. I believe that will bring far more transparency and accountability, and I believe it will also ensure that the funds set aside in both the CAS program and the Lima Letsema program actually make their way.
Honourable Minister, your time is up. Thank you. Honourable R.A.P. Trolley.
Speaker, I'll be taking the question. Honourable Minister, since assuming office 16 months ago, what has been the single greatest threat to South Africa's ability to produce a surplus of food for export, given that true food security relies on surplus production driven by the private sector rather than state intervention? And how is the multi-sector National Food and Nutrition Security Plan addressing that threat? Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
I was going to say the biggest threat's Action SA, but I think that would be tongue-in-cheek. But thank you to the Honourable Beasley for the question. I would say that the biggest threat to surplus production, Honourable Beasley, is biosecurity. And what we've seen over the course of the last decade, a sliding away of our biosecurity. And that has had some real-world consequences. It's meant, for instance, that we do not have access to a variety of markets abroad, particularly on citrus. We've seen the long travail we've had with citrus black spot. We're now currently seeing the issues we're going through with foot and mouth disease, as well as some incursions that we've had from neighboring countries of pests that put our sectors at risk and our production at risk. And so making sure that biosecurity is intact at a border level, but also that within South Africa, we're practicing international best practice when it comes to biosecurity. And that is why we've set up the Biosecurity Hub in conjunction with industry, academics and scientists based at the University of Pretoria. And the Biosecurity Hub is responsible for developing the strategies that government can then roll out to ensure biosecurity. Without sufficient biosecurity, our crops and our ability to produce not only food for ourselves, but food for export, where the premium is gained and where the profitability sits in, will not be achieved. And that is why the third pillar in the department's 7 pillars is biosecurity as everybody's responsibility. And we have to start, as South Africa, taking biosecurity far more seriously than we have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable R.N. Xabekulu. Labezitha Xabekulu.
Indlebe ethu into bezekile ziniphethe kabi. Thanks for the opportunity. Honourable Minister, given the persistent challenges of limited capacity and weak oversight in implementing for food security initiatives, how will the department strengthen coordination across government and partnerships with traditional authorities, smallholder farmers, subsistence farmers, local cooperatives to ensure that these programs reach their areas? Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. And it's precisely the reason that we need to drill down to a district level, that the food security report used districts as the building block and the foundation upon which it uses as a base point for analysis. That means that we're able to identify in the report, and I really do recommend the report to the House for its reading, because in your constituencies, you'll be able to see exactly where the interventions are most required. What that's allowed us to do is to identify those districts that are most at risk in terms of food security, so that our departmental initiatives, provincial departmental initiatives, but also district initiatives can reach into those areas to start to deal with food security. One of the other areas that we are focusing on is the development through the Agricultural Research Council of seed stock for indigenous crops. There's a wealth of knowledge within our small-scale local communities of indigenous crops, things like sorghum, that have fallen off the wayside, but which could play a very important role in terms of food security at a local level. And it's through providing seed stock and assistance to those small-scale farmers to have access to those seeds, but as well as to the capital that is required and the interventions that are required to improve that. I'm sure that you would have seen as well over the course of your oversight, Honourable Lebakulu, that many of the farmer support units are not operating at their optimum. And that is now a key focus that this now has become from land reform into the Department of Agriculture to start to turn those farmer support units into genuine hubs of agricultural technology and assistance, particularly to small-scale farmers, so that they can also start to take advantage of the technology that leads to improved yields of those particular products. We shouldn't be isolating technology to the commercial sector. We should be using precision farming and technology, even at a small scale level, so that we can improve those yields going out. And it's the department's intention through those FPSUs to be able to reach deep into those districts.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you.
Your time is up. Thank you. Honourable person.
Thank you, Minister. Considering that hunger is rising despite multiple overlapping programs, what measurable outcomes, such as reduction in household food insecurity or malnutrition rates, will be used to elevate success? And what accountability measures will be followed if the department fails to meet its standard targets within the first 2 years of implementation?
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much. And obviously, why that report that I referred to earlier was so fundamentally important, Honourable Person, is that we've never had a baseline before in South Africa. What that food security and traditional and nutrition survey did was provide us now with a baseline against which we can measure progress. Now, again, this is a multi-sectoral approach. Whilst the coordination of much of it lies with the Department of Agriculture, the main role around nutrition is played by the Department of Health, the main role of access to nutritious food, social development, and as well as the school basic feeding scheme. So it's about coordinating all of those. What we would want to see is that when we publish next year's report, coming off that baseline to see the improvement and to be able to see those metrics moving in the right direction. Without a baseline, what it's meant is, A, we've had to use a shotgun approach to addressing food security. The new report allows us to focus like a laser beam on those areas that are suffering with food insecurity, but also it allows us to have the baseline against which you and every member of this House can hold us accountable as a department. And obviously the Portfolio Committee and this House have a role to play in that. But it is going to require a whole of society approach to deal with it. It is not acceptable in a middle income country like ours that people are going to bed hungry at night. And we produce enough food in South Africa, and we need to make sure that every citizen in this country, no matter whether in rural or urban areas, has access to good quality, nutritious food on a regular basis. And it is up to this House to hold this department accountable in that coordination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. We now move to the next question. Question 1165 that has been asked by Honourable DDG Van Ryn to the Minister of Finance. The question is, noting that it is almost 8 years since the Special Investigating Unit and the Auditor General established that just over 400 million was fraudulently incurred by the National Treasury through acts of corruption by National Treasury officials and Oracle, whereupon National Treasury resolved to take the findings for review and negotiate its working relationship with Oracle. What are the full details of the latest development on the review and renegotiation process? Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, your time is moving.
It is assumed that the question pertains to the contract between the National Treasury and Oracle for the Integrated Financial Management System. The Auditor General of South Africa did not pronounce findings on alleged corruption concerning IFMS. As to the report of the Special Investigation Unit, the National Treasury filed an application in the High Court to review this report. The parties to this application have filed their respective affidavits, and after heads of argument have been filed, the next step would be for the court to set a hearing date. Only a court of law may find a person guilty of fraud or corruption. No officials or former officials of National Treasury or the service provider have been charged with criminal conduct or found guilty of such pertaining to this matter. Following National Treasury's decision to review the aforementioned report, engagements were initiated with Oracle to reassess the contractual and operational engagements related to the IFMS. These discussions remain ongoing. The objective is to ensure that any future collaboration is underpinned by transparency, accountability, and cost efficiency, and is aligned with the government's broad digital transformation agenda. No new long-term contractual commitments have been concluded to date. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable DDD Van Rooyen. Honorable Minister, you can take your seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
And if you
Honorable
can
Speaker.
switch off your mic, Honorable Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Order.
Allow me also to thank you for the congratulatory message.
Chief Whip, I think that your member want to ask a question.
Yes, Madam Speaker, there's a member from that side that is calling the Chief Whip the weekend special. Can the member withdraw that? It's unparliamentary. Yes, there's a member that side.
Thank you. I'll ask the table to assist me.
Yes.
Can, in the meantime, allow the Chief Whip of the MK Party to make a follow-up question. Order, honorable members.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Minister, your response lacks any sign of determination to deal with corruption and fraud as established by National Treasury and the AG's office. Compounding this matter, Minister, is the fact that it's a well-held opinion within your ministry and the ICT sector that there are officials and senior politicians that you are defending. That's why almost a decade now, we haven't had any progress on this matter. But also you are defending Oracle, a foreign company that is dominating our ICT space in South Africa. Now, these allegations are very serious, Minister. I think we should come out clear on what is your take about this serious allegation against the ministry that is holding the national purse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Honorable Speaker, I think in answering the honorable member, I said no pronouncement by AG insofar as SIU report is taken for review, and those officials have every right, because they performed those functions in their capacity as officials employed by National Treasury. They've got every right to protect their reputation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question has been asked by Honorable Squati.
Thank you, Speaker. To Minister of Finance, the objective of undertaking the implementation of the integrated financial management system has been an important step in the right direction, but as well in terms of a digitization of the systems at both the provincial and the national government to ensure that there is an enhancement in terms of government processes. However, we realize that there was a delay. Would you share with us in terms of the impact that has been created by the delay, but as well the mitigation steps that the National Treasury has taken to make sure that we are able to mitigate those effects of the delay? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
It is important to note that this IFMS was intended to replace old age financial management systems, such as PESAL, such as Logis, all of them in their present form, unless you do a patch and work as we've done with Vudendlela, are insufficient and therefore poses a risk. So in the meantime, what Treasury has done was to improve operational efficiency using the modules that are.
Order, honorable member, can you please speak off?
Program, Treasury has reset the program and using modern approach to try and make sure that you can plug the gap in the meantime. There's something called the Digital Government South Africa, a platform which progressively introduces integrated financial management capability, supporting improved transparency, stronger controls, and preparedness for future accrual alignment reporting. So those are the systems we're using in trying to deal with the current challenges we're facing in the immediate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wakely.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable Minister, given the ongoing legal matter between the National Treasury and the SIU and the recent cancellation of the Oracle contract, how will the Minister ensure the National Treasury's ability to maintain its reputation as the trusted custodian of taxpayers' money, given that the reputational damage that this matter has now caused the National Treasury? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
There's no doubt in the manner in which it has been managed in the public domain. To some extent, National Treasury has taken a knock in terms of reputation. No doubt about that. As to what processes we should do to manage the damaged reputation, or should we focus on getting the things right and in the process regain reputation? Those are challenges we've got to think about. For as long as in the medium space and people accuse us of corruption, which we suspect we're not, we'll always take a reputation. Yeah.
Thank you. Honorable Matthias.
Thank you so much. On their own accord, have taken the matter for review. Is the department that Honorable Minister is responsible for? And the Minister, as he speaks, on one end of his mouth, condones impunity and wrongdoing. On the other side of his mouth, condemns wrongdoing. But what is key, and perhaps what we need to ask now, Honorable Speaker, is whether the National Treasury is above the law. Are the National Treasury officials exempt from same level of scrutiny as other officials of other departments? What message are you sending, Honourable Minister, when more than 400 million was looted, continues to be unaccounted for, and yet no one is held accountable, and you seem not to be committed to hold anyone?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Time is up.
Thank you so much, Honourable.
Honourable Minister.
There are too many questions in one. In case I don't answer all of them, will bear with me. I don't think anybody says Treasury officials are above the law. If the National Treasury loses the matter in a court of law, well, mind you, at the moment, the matter is before a court of law. It's not that they're above the law. If National Treasury loses this matter in a court of law and the court of law says those officials have a case to answer, they'll definitely have to answer that case at the appropriate time. And I think we should be give them the opportunity for a court of law to make that pronouncement, not we ourselves make that judgment. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is question 1112, which has been asked by Honorable OMC Maudre to the Minister of Finance. The question is about total number of senior officials between chief directors and directors general who have either resigned or retired, who are now hired as consultants by National Treasury, including the Government Technical Advisory Center. whether he has found that this is a deliberate strategy not to build internal capacity, but instead to move towards the use of consultants as the Republic does not have the required capacity. If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, what are the relevant details? Honourable Minister.
Indeed, there's one official in the National Treasury who has retired and retained to do some consultants' work. And that official is Momoinat, Ishmael Momoinat. Why has Ishmael Momoinat been retained? Because Ishmael Momoinat, at the time of retirement, he was dealing with both the Zondo Commission state capture issues and the FATF process. And therefore, we had to retain him precisely because of those skills to take us to the conclusion of the FATF process, which he has done successfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mawutra, be taken by Honorable Kalniels.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I hear what the Minister says about the return of Ishmael Mumuniat to the Treasury. Now, my question is, Minister, it is not entirely true that it is just that official that has been recycled, because it appears that the ANC does not believe that the National Treasury must be transformed. What we are actually seeing, Minister, is a well-coordinated and deliberate effort to retain the same individuals, not just within the Treasury, but in the Treasury space. If we are not keeping senior officials as Momoniat there in the Treasury, who should rightfully be in retirement, we are recycling others through the revolving door between the National Treasury, the private banking sector, the IMF, and the World Bank. Now, Minister, are we saying that 3 decades after our democracy has come about, South Africa has not produced enough young, qualified professionals who understand the economic crisis facing our country to take over leadership roles within the Treasury space? Thank you.
Well, Honorable Minister, you can answer the question, but I just wanted to advise the member that you have had a new question which goes broader than the initial question asked by Honorable Mawutra. But I would leave it to the Minister to answer.
Yeah, uhambele phambili, but Madam Lungis. The nature of the skills we have in Treasury, the nature of the skills we have in PIC, the nature of the skills in DBSA, as such are the skills that are attractive to banks. And as a result, you'll find that even now, that's why we've got to pay a competitive salary, is that banks steal our people. Banks steal our people. As to other officials who leave and retire and become employed by banks, they're employed because of their skill. They're not retained by National Treasury. The same applies to the IMF. The IMF has got 2 different kinds of people in World Bank and also the African Development Bank. There are people who are employed by National Treasury as employees of National Treasury who are deployed in those institutions to serve our purposes, like an executive director level who represent the country. Those are the people. It's not a revolving door. I think you need to be helping in that regard.
Thank you. Honorable Kaleka Masibuko.
Honorable Speaker, the development of internal state capabilities is fundamental for the state to realize its developmental objectives. The National Treasury has key entities such as GTEC, DBSA, and its own internal capabilities that can significantly contribute to developing the capabilities of the state in the 3 spheres of government. What initiatives are the National Treasury, GTEC, and DBSA implementing to develop the state capabilities of municipalities to provide key basic services, Minister? I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
That's what we do best.
What?
Huh?
You stood up, Minister, and said, this is what you do best. So I was trying to understand. Which one? You can
That's what we
answer.
do. What's good be done. Let me just say the Development Bank of Southern Africa, first and foremost, is active in all municipalities in the country. Not only in all municipalities, but also throughout the African continent. In the process, it's also developing skills. What we have also discovered is that through the BFI, a number of institutions, their projects failed to meet the BFI precisely because they've not been prepared properly. And therefore, DBSA we've also located in that space to be able to help these municipalities. And a case in point, we've just finished now the Polokwane wastewater treatment, which has been done via that process. So, and what else other institution we're asking about?
GTech?
Oh, GTech. Oh, GTech is also training a great deal in municipalities. They're also assisting with municipality in capacity development. So that's all our institutions are playing in that space.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Burke, I'm not sure that I've pronounced your surname okay.
Perfectly, Chair.
Thank you.
I note that the Honourable Nia spoke liberally and repeatedly about the word retirement. My question is in that vein. Is it true that National Treasury has a long history of building skills from within the organization and that vacancies are often filled via internal promotion? And if this is true, does the Minister then not regard Treasury as something of an example of internal skills development?
Minister?
Will be tricky, this question. I must think carefully. No, it's true that if you look in you even can look at this current crop of DDGs. If you look at this current crop of DDGs, all of them are homegrown. And it's standard in National Treasury to do exactly that. Even interns, when we take interns over a longer period. And some of them do not leave us. And one of them has emerged as the chief director at the moment. We are also a training center for chartered accountants. As we speak this year, in the current lot, we've taken about 23 people who are going to be trained as chartered accountants. So indeed, we do develop our own skills base and homegrown.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I could see that you are saying you are thinking carefully how you'll answer, because I've seen a number of your colleagues here thinking, so we can get money to do exactly what Treasury does. Honorable E.K. Madlala.
Minister, given the high cost associated with the rehiring of former senior officials as consultants, while existing internal capacity remains underutilized, why has the minister not put concrete measures in place to eradicate duplication of payments to consultants in instances where the National Treasury and GTech already possesses the necessary internal capacity to perform the same duties? Even in an incident where it could be one, in a scientifically run organization, you would obviously have a program to transfer skills, because retirement is not unprecedented. What are the steps that the minister has put in place to eradicate the existence of that?
Honorable Minister.
I thought I made the point that the employment of Mr. Ishmael Momoinat was an exception, precisely because of his skills base in that work and continuity. Then if you said you wanted to bring in a completely new person, do interviews and bring a completely new person, that would have been a problem. So I don't think in this particular case that argument falls. By the way, the better part of his work, he was doing it at a salary of a DDG. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is question 1094, which has been asked by Honorable J. Maswanganyi to the Minister of Finance. The question is about the date when the Public Procurement Act 28 of 2024 regulations will be developed and implemented, as they are critical in operationalizing the specified act to accelerate the transformation of the economy and enhance procurement systems to effectively ensure that the government optimizes its procurement, and what is the current preferential procurement spending profile in the 2024-2025 financial year? Honorable Minister.
In July, on the 8th of July, when I was delivering a speech for the departmental vote, I indicated that the draft regulations will be ready for intergovernmental consultation at the end of August 2025. The draft of the regulation is a complex undertaking dealing with intricacies of the entire public procurement landscape, which includes within its scope national, provincial, and local government, as well as public entities, and parliament and provincial legislatures to a limited extent. More time is required to ensure that the draft regulations give appropriate effect to all aspects that require regulations and are drafted clearly and concisely. The preparation of the draft regulation has now reached its final state and will soon be ready for the intergovernmental consultation with the affected ministers as well as organized local government. Thereafter, the draft regulation must be released for public comment, and after consideration of the comments and the revision of the draft regulations, Parliament will scrutinize them. These consulting steps are prescribed by Section 363 of the Public Procurement Act. Once these steps are completed, the final regulations will be promulgated, given the various steps before promulgation and the possibility of extensive comments that must be considered. It is not possible to provide a specific date for the regulations. However, the need to bring the Act and the regulations in force to accelerate economic transformation and enhance the public procurement system to curtail the misuse of public funds and corruption is a government priority. Thank you.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Subrati. The table has been informed that the Honourable Subrati will take the question in the place of the Honourable Maswanganyi. Please proceed, member, if you do have a follow-up question. Otherwise, we will continue to the next question.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Is it really that despite the preferential procurement policy directing public spending to prioritize historically marginalized groups, the significant beneficiaries of public procurement are still white-owned businesses only, and less than 50% was spent on companies with 51% Black-owned, while youth and persons with disability received less than 9% and 1% respectively? This is further expounded by the fact that the industries that produce the goods that are consumed by government. What measures will the department take in regulations and planning to ensure that the localization and local content requirements and set-asides are effectively aligned to support emerging Black industrialists to ensure government is the first off-taker to secure the developmental and growth of local and Black-owned industries? I think.
The Honourable Minister.
You say the piece of legislation we presented here in Parliament was simple. But when we came out of Parliament, we couldn't even recognize it because of the massive amendments that were made on the legislation to give a content, correctly so, to the developmental objectives which the piece of legislation must achieve. But we must accept that what that then do is to make the interpretation very difficult in terms of regulations. Having said that, there's clearly an improvement in terms of the achieving black-owned, women-owned enterprises. There is progress in this regard. What we've not been successful in doing is designation. In other words, which sectors should be designated as those that should be designed either for small and medium enterprise, either for the one thing I've discovered now, the Department of Labor have got institutions that provide services by disabled people. I mean, that's something that has come to my attention now. It may require some designation, but we need, myself and the Minister of Trade and Industry, to look at the designated list and make the appropriate decisions. So it's work that we're undertaking with the Minister concerned to achieve also local content and promote local industries and black economic empowerment. So that's a designation we might think of immediate, which came across my mind, was this issue work of disabled people who can make even furniture for governments, provide linen for hospitals, and so on and so on. That work is being considered.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Alexander.
Thank you. Minister, after 2 decades of BEE creating a millionaire class of politically connected insiders, while conditions worsen for the unemployed majority it claims to empower, how will the new Procurement Act regulations avoid replicating these failures, particularly with regards to ensuring that procurement preferences deliver measurable contributions to job creation, poverty alleviation, and skills development?
The Honourable Minister.
There's an assertion which is incorrect. An assertion which is incorrect that black economic empowerment has created a few millionaires. Black economic empowerment has got an array of instruments in it. Right? Some of them is equity in industry. Some of them is just affirmative action and employment equity in industry. If you look between 1994 and to date, particularly in government, and see how many black people are there, you go into the financial sector and look how many black people sit in senior positions. And as a result of the Black Economic Empowerment program, they may, where the DA is missing the point, where the DA is missing the point, there may be unintended consequences, which we're all witnesses as a result of a nobly law piece of legislation. There may be unintended consequences, which if the debate was rotating around those unintended consequences, you'll probably find us waiting. I think that's where we should have a discussion about. But black economic empowerment as a principle is an important, and because we're trying to deal with society cast in a racial mode. And in order to transform such a society which was cast in a racial mode, then you have got to use extraordinary measures to transform that society, to ensure that all of us live in a society in which we are equitable. There's also an assertion which is wrong, which suggests what the DA believes is South Africa's belief. It's not true. When you say, now, given that people believe this, believe that, it is your belief. It is not South Africans' belief.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Van Rooyen.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Kapuo ya ga mme ba re le duba thanka. A ke tswa wa nkutla re ke minister. Ni tlovutaka. And I will tell you why I'm saying ni tlovutaka. you have opted, you are not forced, you have opted to go to bed with the most anti-progressive, ahistoric, and of course, reactionary and anti-transformation cohort of the South African society in the form of DA and Freedom Front Plus. Now, these ones, they don't believe in transformation. But out of your own collective wisdom, you have opted to go to bed with them. Tell us, how are you going to navigate through procurement provisions as a BEE with such wrong partners? How are you going to do that? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
You know, Does as he speaks, he forgets that Honourable Van Rooyen.
Honourable Minister, could you please take your seat? Honourable Member, on what point are you rising?
No, bengifuna ukuthi nje honorable Des.
No, my apologies. My apologies. We come a long way. That's why I use first name. My apologies. By the way, I was negotiating with him for GNU, a hotel. Now,
order, honourable members. Order. Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Honourable Van Rooyen, is that a point of order? Order, honourable members. I would like to hear the member.
By the provision of the rule of this House, the Minister is casting a serious and a dangerous suspicion.
Honourable
Minister
member,
is lying to the nation.
Honourable member,
he might be found on the white side. I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Honourable member, your point is not sustained. Honourable Minister, please proceed.
I want to put two things first. The first point, we were together this side, and you decided to leave and go and sit that side and then say, let's unite in Jan Lord.
Honourable members, order. Honourable members, order. Honourable members, order. Honourable members, order.
Thereafter, we tried to negotiate with you. We tried to negotiate in 2 meetings. The last one was hotel. No. What you did is we must tell the public why we couldn't sleep you in bed. Because you said you can only work with us on condition that we chase our president away. How does that work? Because
honourable members,
you are telling your
Minister, please take your seat.
You need to be told the truth.
Honourable Minister,
supporters must know.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Honourable members of the MK, I'm trying to recognise your own new chief whip, but you don't allow me. So please allow me to recognise your whip. Honourable Van Rooyen.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I think there is some regression in terms of how the question is being answered. The Minister is no longer talking about the answer, he's talking other stories now. Please rule on this matter.
Honourable Van Rooyen, that is not a point of order. You would know the rules, or maybe you can consult the rules, that the Minister can answer the question as he does deem fit. If you're not satisfied, you may write to the Minister and ask for a written reply. The Minister's time has expired, and Honourable Member, I'm not taking another point of order. We will now proceed. Honourable Swart, the last supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I leave my video off just for connectivity issues? The ACDP, like so many others, is deeply concerned about the high levels of corruption, particularly when public procurement accounts for a significant portion of government expenditure, nearly R1 trillion. The Zondo Commission was particularly scathing of corruption, where stated evidence received by the Commission demonstrates that in many cases, the boards of SOEs have shirked their responsibilities, or worse, used their powers to corrupt the SOEs, which they've been appointed to protect. The collective misconduct, he pointed out, was evidenced by an abuse of centralized procurement processes. Does the Honourable Minister believe that the provisions in the Public Procurement Act and the draft regulations will sufficiently remedy the shortcomings relating to procurement corruption highlighted by Judge Zondo, and if so, in what way? Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Let me start with the judgment of Judge Madlanga in the Supreme Court in the Constitutional Court. Judge Madlanga said two things. The Constitution gives you power to make legislation. You can then, through regulations, you make yourself a bad law, and then through regulation trying to circumvent that. First, you are wrong. He's telling me there's means of finance. The second thing Judge Madlanga says, he says, each organ of state, not treasury, each organ of state must have its own procurement policy operating within the guidelines set out by Treasury. That's what Treasury does, sets norms and standards. That's what Treasury does. And each organ of state must then have its own procurement policies. It's quite important, that distinction, because every now and again when something happens, whether it's in Tembisa Hospital or elsewhere, people ask where Treasury is. The third point I want to make, if people want to flout Treasury regulations, they will. Let me give you an example of what's happening now. The threshold for no big tenders, is 500,000. What then people do, they issue a tender for 499,000. It's less than 500,000. And then they split, even if it's a 1.5 tender, into 3 tenders. And it's given to friends. Mind you, people like to say it's politicians. Go into this report of the SIU and look who are the people who are doing these things. Not just junior officials. And they linked up then with this syndicate outside.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The time has expired. The next question is question 1154 and has been asked by the Honourable Zondi to the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources. The question is about the legislative provisions by which the SA National Petroleum Company was formulated as a legal entity. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Members, the South African National Petroleum Company, SNPC, was incorporated in terms of the Companies Act. 2, it is established, its establishment is provided for in the South African National Petroleum Company Bill. Now, that is the legislation framework. The reason that we have a bill that is before Parliament is to regularize that. At this point in time, it is working as a subsidiary of SAF until that bill is promulgated into an act. Why do we do that? It's because the entities that are pulled together to form SANPED are all subsidiaries of SAF. So we have not disestablished them. We'll establish them when that bill becomes law. The fortunate part is that the bill has now been certified by the state law advisor. It is going to go to the committee, the portfolio committee in Parliament. That's what we're waiting for. Let me add one aspect. We're doing that because we want to establish a petroleum champion for South Africa, like any other country. You can go to Angola, they have. You can go to Brazil, they have. Last week we were in Vietnam, and they have Petro Vietnam. And that is the trend because the scale of economies determine the effectiveness of an entity. That's what is driving us.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Zondi.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The South African National Petroleum Company, SANPEC, is a subsidiary of the Central Energy Fund, the CEF Group, another state-owned entity. Section 51, subsection 1G of the PFMA states that an accounting authority for a public entity must promptly inform the National Treasury on any new entity which that public entity intends to establish or in the establishment of which it takes initiative, and allow the National Treasury a reasonable time to submit its decision prior to formal establishment. This is an important safeguard in the legislation to ensure that all state-owned subsidiaries are PFMA compliant and do not adversely affect the state's finances in the future. The SANPEC registration is K2022-46906930. The company was registered in 2022. It appears the company was registered before getting the Section 51 approval, which leaves it open for a possible legal challenge from debtors who can question its legal standing to avoid paying their debts. Do you confirm the company was registered after it got Section 51, subsection 1G of the PFMA approval by the National Treasury, and that it is registered with the Information Regulator to comply with the POPI Act? If not, what will you do to rectify this?
The Honourable Minister.
SANPEC is registered. It is complying with all the legal requirements. That's why it is operating as a subsidiary of CEF. And we're working on a process of passing the bill into a law to make it a standalone company. It is not a standalone company, it is a subsidiary of CEF. Because Petro SA, iGas, and SFF are all subsidiaries of CEF. That's how it works. And it is operational, it has not contravened any law.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Hassan.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, in simple terms, especially for our viewers and our people at home who want to understand what this particular piece of legislation means for them, what new things will SANPEC be able to do under this particular bill, and how will those powers practically improve the security of supply? Specifically about keeping more fuel in reserve, speeding up imports, and ensuring backup gas where there are disruptions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Minister.
The establishment of that company is driven by the desire to ensure that there's security of supply. That is the basis. The entire law is talking to that really. And the company is aimed at ensuring that the state competes in the open market as a competent entity. And that is what is going to come out of that company when it is established by that law. What is critical is that the law itself must give SANPEC the right framework to compete. And the reason for that is, at a point, there was a very strong hostility to fossil fuels. And many people thought that fossil fuels will be out of fashion, they will disappear. They are not disappearing, they are growing. And the demand for fossil fuel is growing every year globally. And we need to play in that space as a country. That is what that act is all about. It's about us ensuring that there's security of supply, and we all play in that space as a country.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Selepe.
Honourable Minister, assuming that the
South African National Petroleum Company bill passes and Sunpack become a standalone entity, what have you done as part of the process of putting in place a new SAF mandate?
The Honourable Minister.
A new SAF mandate. SAF is a holding company. It has subsidiaries under it. You don't need to change that mandate. Because the holding company, what you should do in the operations is to make SAF smaller but top-class skills in it so that it can intervene in the subsidiaries. That's all you need to do. You don't need to change the mandate of SAF. It is okay, it's a holding company. It is having 5 subsidiaries under it. Once you have Sunpack standing alone, it will be left with 2. You can restructure that space. But as a holding company, anywhere else, and holding company, that is what we're discussing and trying to educate SAF about. You are a holding company, don't compete with your subsidiaries. You are creating a misnomer by competing with your subsidiaries. Don't be operational, assist your subsidiaries, have fewer but top-class skills at SAF level so that your intervention will be effective at the subsidiary level.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mayalola.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, following the launch of the South African National Petroleum Company as a state-owned company in the petroleum sector, and considering the EFF long-standing view that the state must take ownership of its strategic resources, what role will the company play in present and future exploration of mineral and petroleum resources in a way that ensures that the state plays a central role in the exploitation of our natural resources for the benefit of all South Africans? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Sunpack will not do anything in mining. Let's take that out. It is a petroleum company. It will deal with oil and gas exploration and exploitation. That is the role it will play. And therefore ensure that we have secured supply of petroleum, not mining. That's why in the exploration level, you will have your Council for Geoscience for mining, and you'll have your Petroleum Association of South Africa for petroleum. And that will continue with South African National Petroleum Company trading in that space, and therefore it will import, it will exploit internal resources as we overcome the challenges by foreign-funded NGOs that try to block that development. Once we overcome that problem, it will be a good company with internal supply and also importing. There's all the capacity. That's why the issue of the island view, I'm just giving that to you, it's very important to us that we get it at a bigger volume to secure the state capacity to ensure that there is security of supply of petroleum, not mining.
I'll say, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Matiasi, your point of order.
The Minister knows that from the bottom is that dichotomizing petroleum from mining is disingenuous.
Honourable Matiasi, you are now entering into a debate with the Minister, and that is not a point of order.
Point of order is that the Minister must be sincere with his answer.
Honourable Matiasi, that is not a point of order. We will now proceed. Question number 1095 has been asked by the Honourable Mashlaule to the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources. The question is about the timeline for the full rollout and realization of the new cadastral system and interim measures that are in place to minimize the impact of the current licensing backlog on the growth of the mining sector. The Honourable Minister.
Honourable Speaker, yesterday I made the point that anarchy is counter-revolutionary. You must always remember that if you are engaging destructively, you are being counter-revolutionary. Don't do that. Now, the national rollout of the new cadastral system is structured province by province. Implementation designed to ensure that a systematic and successful transition from existing SAMRAD, and the entire process is scheduled for completion by November 2025. Now, this phased approach is designed to allow adequate time for system testing. We don't just implement. You implement, you test the system. You implement and test the system. And in that testing of the system, you ensure that you don't miss your steps. Now, and the rollout commenced in the Western Cape. We're in the middle of rolling it out. And that was in October last month. And the transition will proceed sequentially with the final phase concluded in November 2026. November 2026 with the Northwestern Province. By the end of the period, all 9 provinces will have fully transitioned from SAMRAD and will be operating under the new cadastral system, a comprehensive land recording system critical for effective land management. And in order to address the challenges with regard to licensing, backlog additional capacity is being sourced from other regional offices. So when we have a rollout in the Western Cape, we take people from other provinces to assist in that province. That is what we're doing. We're rolling it out province by province at this point in time.
I have been informed that the Honourable Hassan will take charge of the first question on behalf of the Honourable Mashlaule in accordance with Rule 13710A. I now recognise the Honourable Hassan.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Minister, noting the importance of a transparent cadastral system for its potential role in attracting investment and unlocking the mineral wealth of the Republic, and given the ongoing delays in the full implementation of the new system, what accountability mechanisms are in place for the service provider and your department's project team should the announced timelines for the full rollout of the new cadastral system fail to be met? And what progress, if any, have the interim measures already achieved in reducing the current licensing backlog? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
One of the first issues that we must understand is that the delay is aimed at dealing with the complexity of data cleaning. Given decades of mining in the country, as well as inaccuracies of data on the current system. That's why we're changing the system. And a decision was taken to effect that only verified and quality information is fed on the cadastral system. And as a result of that, we are slow, but to ensure that we put in clean data, we don't commit the same mistake. We can rush. I can give you an example of 1 or 2 countries where they rushed to implement a cadastral system, and that cadastral system collapsed in their face. We don't want to have that. We want to check it as we go, as we roll it out. Therefore, the department continues to focus on efficient processing of licensing applications. On an annual basis, the department processes no less than 2,500 applications per year. And the vast majority of these applications are either rejected or refused, as applicants usually apply where there is an existing right already. So that's where we are. So the question of being slow is not an accident, rather than a precaution to ensure that the data fed in the new system is of quality and is correct.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Lorimer.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The old cadastral system, SAMRAD, was problematic, Minister, from when it was introduced in 2011. So much so that I was agitating in this Parliament as long ago as 2015 for it to be replaced. Minister, why do you think it took so many years from then until January 2023 for the department to admit that SAMRAD was not functioning? And can you explain why it will have taken another 4 years before we get a fully functioning system, if indeed it functions?
The Honourable Minister.
The beauty of leadership is that it is continuous. You don't disown mistakes that were done before you took over. They are your responsibility. Yes, they are your responsibility. I can't disown it. If that was what you were driving from 2011, when I was still in Luthuli House, being the Secretary General, I own up for that, for my predecessors. No. Don't howl when you ask a question. Allow me to answer you. Now, having done that, we're now into the cadastral system. It took time to take that decision. We visited at least 3 countries to go and check how the cadastral system worked, and we came back, we're implementing it. We're in the middle of implementing it. We're rolling it out in provinces. Thank you.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I would just like to know from the Minister, are there interest groups or persons or people or whatever who will gain by the delayed implementation of that and who might willfully try to delay it? And what precautions are in place to prevent that?
The Honourable Minister.
The assumption is wrong. Because the assumption you are making here is that because we are putting in a cadastral system, everything is in a standstill. We continue processing applications manually as we're working on the cadastral system. So that is continuing. So if there is a delay, it's a delay that is part of the process and the system. And we'll address that. By the way, let me emphasize this. As I said earlier, that applications are very complex because when you apply for a mining license, you identify a farm only to discover that that farm is actually having a person who has a right or a permit on it. All those are rejected and sent back to the owner. Manually, it takes a bit longer. Once we get the cadastral system, we're hopeful that we'll accelerate that process.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Zibi.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to ask the Minister when, in terms of the current schedule of the rollout of the system, it will be rolled out in the Northwest and Limpopo provinces, which have South Africa's biggest deposits of platinum group metals and ferroalloys. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
We said it will be finished in November 2026. And the last province will be the Northwest. Let me tell you, why is the Northwest last? And I would imagine that Limpopo will be among the last because you test the system in a smaller province, you correct the mistakes and roll it out to the more difficult and complex provinces. So give us time up to November 2026. We'll go province by province.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next question is question number 1164 and has been asked by the Honourable Ismail Musa to the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The question is, given that communities in remote and rural areas still face challenges to access reliable and affordable internet, what steps has he taken to ensure that the Republic establishes its own satellite system to reduce its reliance on foreign systems that are vulnerable to infrastructural disruptions beyond its control? And what plans has he put in place to ensure that remote areas will be prioritized to replace fiber infrastructure, which is not only too expensive, but also unreliable If not, why not? If so, what are the relevant details? The Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. First of all, it is important to recognize that the government views satellite communication as a useful tool that can expand broadband access to areas that are otherwise not reachable by wireless, mobile, or fixed network, as the Honourable Member's question also implies. And this recognition is based on the fact that they will help in addressing the connectivity gaps where terrestrial-based solutions are often too slow, too costly, and even impossible to deploy. And I guess it was this that informed the fifth administration to start the exploration of a draft national satellite communication strategy. And the purpose was to establish how satellite solutions, including the possibility of a state-owned capacity, can best support digital inclusion and foster the digital transformation that our country needs. However, it is important to recognize that in doing so, there's a fundamental question that always has to be asked. That is, can and or does the state have the capacity to fund a project of this magnitude that has the potential to run into several billions? And it is the exercise that has taken place in order to establish, one, given our fiscal priorities, do we have enough to embark on this, or we should look at different models of ownership and funding, whether that funding should be entirely done by National Treasury, or we should consider the prospect of private and public partnerships, or alternatively look at funding through development finance institutions. I think at any given point, any government has to make and balance its priorities. The important element is that through the evolution of technology, there is no way we can ignore the fact that satellite solutions play a critical role in enhancing access to broadband connectivity. And it will ultimately be informed by whether the South African government, whether it is in this term or the next term, has sufficient resources in its fiscus to fund or pursue this avenue of a potential ownership of a state-owned satellite company. Thank you.
First supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ishmael Musa.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Minister, the question is that what plans have you put in place to ensure that remote areas will be prioritized to replace fiber infrastructure, which is not only too expensive, but also unreliable? If not, why not? If so, what are the relevant details? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much. The answer to the question lies in the strategy, right? That the gap that can be filled by where there is lack of coverage due to absence of fiber is satellite solutions. We have to make the determination, do we leverage the existing capacity that is in the market? And because there are already several providers of satellite solutions, some of them local, some of them international. And this has to be informed by the government's position on how to proceed on its satellite policy. So in order to reconcile those two, it can't be a mindless intervention. It has to be an intervention that is informed by the country's strategy towards embracing satellite technology.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Matafa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, given the new policy allowing departments to procure IT services outside of SETA, what financial control mechanisms has your department implemented to prevent the proliferation of costly IT contracts across government, which could lead to a lack of economies of scale? And how is your department ensuring that SETA is not simply left with only the complex, non-lucrative contracts, thereby crippling its own revenue and its long-term mandate to provide cost-effective services? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I am at your grace. The Honourable Member is on another question, so I don't know how to proceed. The follow-up question he has relates to another question, so.
Honourable Matafa, I am going to, because we don't have many opportunities, if you would like to repeat that question, I can understand that you maybe had the wrong one there, and allow the Minister then to respond.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. No, that is the only question that I have. I'll plead with the Minister to use his discretion. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, it is now up to you if you want to answer that. Ahead of time.
Deputy Speaker, I understand Honorable Matafa's passion about this subject. I will answer it. The intervention that we've made with the regulation, it wasn't a policy directive, Honorable Matafa. It was a regulation based on the frustration across the ecosystem of government that government departments and government ministers, and some of them are in here, that there is a real constraint with the capacity of SETA's ICT deliverable in terms of meeting the needs of government departments, the costing element of it, and government departments mobilized me and reasonably understood that, say, can we be provided with a relief that empowers government department with a choice? That choice is still subject to the very same procurement processes that any other government process entails from the PFMA's prospect. So on that score, the compliance with existing procurement rules remains the same. It must still meet the test of suitability per the needs of the department, and it must be based on a business case. So it's not a discretion that someone will just wake up the following day and decide to go another avenue. They must be able, upon submission of a solid business case, to say that based on our test of the market, we are convinced that what you are providing, we can procure it quicker, we can procure it at a lower cost for efficiency and for quality of service, because those are the three ingredients that must always drive quality of delivery, not excessive costs, not prolonged services, and not unreliable services. But I'll still be ready to take it again.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Matafa, you there have an answer from the Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ngobese.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers present here, Honourable Members. Honourable Minister, given that many rural and remote areas remain disconnected even after years and years of fiber rollout promises, what alternative access models is your department exploring, such as community-based networks, a public-private partnership, or shared spectrum arrangement to ensure affordable and reliable internet access for those communities, please?
The Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much, Honourable Member. The reality is it has to be a multi-pronged approach. And that is why even the question we're grappling with is moving with speed to be able to get to the gap that is currently not being touched by fiber rollout. And it is part of the reasons that the creation and the establishment of the SA Connect project was initiated, to reach those communities for last mile connectivity. And that is why it is largely premised on connection of government facilities, including even traditional authorities in the most remote areas. The reality is we have to also look at, from a policy intervention, what can we take? And infrastructure sharing is one of the possible solutions. It will obviously require that from the regulator side in terms of part of the licensing conditions that are attached in the issuance of licenses to the telcos, and also even the allocation of spectrum, that a provision is made for that so that we maximize every possible avenue for South Africans to get connected, regardless of which channel they ultimately get broadband connectivity.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Hendricks.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. Minister, how does the department intend to safeguard national data sovereignty and cybersecurity if reliance on foreign satellites and fiber networks continue, particularly in light of growing global geopolitics and cyber threats? Thanks, Minister.
The Honourable Minister.
The foundation of the question presumes that there's already reliance on, foreign satellites. But be that as it may, the reality is that there are sufficient guardrails done by, the regulator through the issuance of conditions attached to operating licenses that put in penalties in terms of the violation of that. And over and above that, in between in between national laws such as the Cybersecurity Act and all the other instruments within the state, that is sufficient to deal with nefarious elements when or should they prevail. So I think, you know, in as much as I think you are anticipating a future that does not exist now, the reality is that there is sufficient within the current legislative framework to respond very adequately to that risk if it emerges.
We now move on to question number 1096, which has been asked by the Honourable Sangoni to the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The question is about the plans that have been implemented by his department to capitalize on the cost-saving foundation and strategically reposition the South African Post Office for long-term sustainability beyond further staff and branch reductions, and what mechanisms has he implemented to ensure that the South African Post Office diversifies its offerings and revenue, given the decline in revenue and insufficient investment in technology? The Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. There's been a series of interventions that are immediate that the department has initiated to support both the survival and the sustainability of the South African Post Office. In March, there was an allocation of 150 million from the department's budget that was injected towards the post office to ensure that it can keep its operations. In addition to this, an amount of 381 million was sourced through the temporary employee relief scheme through the Department of Labor in order to keep those operations running. These funds were strictly for operational continuity, specifically for working capital needs such as salaries, and the funding was granted on the strict condition that it wouldn't be used for any external resources that have been allocated to the post office. The fundamental question about the future of the post office is that we need to get over one thing which currently constrains us. The post office, as is commonly known, is currently under business rescue. And that means that it is constrained in terms of the interventions that even from the shareholders' perspective can be made, because those actions have to be compliant with the court outcomes of that. However, the reality is that any consideration about prolonging the sustainability of the post office means that we have to look with an open mind at the prospects of attracting sustainable and private investment in there. And I know this has often been weaponized. The reality about this is looking at strategic partnerships that the post office can enter into, leveraging on its depth of infrastructure to be able to transition into the future that the market has moved into areas of e-commerce, into areas of digitization. And I think one of the key instruments that's going to help us get to that is already the business rescue practitioners have expressed a desire to exit the business rescue process. For that to be actioned, the courts must ultimately satisfy itself that all the associated conditions have been met. And from our side, there is equally that desire to get in there. But it is important that the post-business rescue chapter of the post office lends into a stable leadership that can then take the entity forward. It is to that end that we have already initiated the process for the appointment of the South African Post Office, of the Post Office Board, so that there is a leadership structure and that there isn't a disruption between the period with which the courts grant the business rescue practitioners their request to departure and the time in which the finalization of the appointment of the board can be done. So that from a leadership and continuity perspective, there is that leadership at the entity. It is a long journey. It is a complicated process because it also equally depends on external dependencies in terms of how you quickly finalize the appointment of the board. There's the cabinet compliance process that must be done, as cabinet is the ultimate approver of those appointments. But there is no way in which we can guarantee the future of the post office by thinking that it can survive with sole dependency on government funding alone. The evolution that has happened in the sector, the burdens that our fiscus is facing require that we explore the channel of these private partnerships in the market so that they can help sustain the post office and meet its mandate in promoting universal postal access to universal postal services with that regard. Does it mean that the results will be immediate? No. But I think it is the right path to take in order to make sure that we get as many South Africans who are not yet able to access other means of postal and courier services in the communities that they are based, because that is where the post office exists. Thank you.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Sangoni. I see it is the Honourable Subrati.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for your response. I was hoping you would have talked a little bit more on these strategic partnerships, because both yourself and your DG have indicated a while ago to the Portfolio Committee when you appeared that the department will be going out to the market for strategic partnerships for the post office. And if I'm not mistaken, you would have mentioned that you're either going in the week or within 2 weeks. Given that the ultimate survival of the post office, as you've indicated, is dependent on it being repurposed with urgency, and given that strategic partnerships are crucial to achieve this, maybe more focused, Honourable Minister, what progress have you made to secure such strategic partnerships, citing examples for us? What types of partnerships have you secured, and maybe what are the criteria you have considered or will consider in securing these partnerships? Thank you, Honourable Speaker, Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Subrati. So part of the process of getting to the goal of those private partnerships meant that we had to engage with the Development Bank of South Africa in terms of getting their advice on how we approach this journey. And the idea with doing that was for them to provide us with advice on the appointment of transactional advisors who then have the capacity to assess the quality of those private partnerships that come in place. Because as you would recall, based on the interactions in the Portfolio Committee, the business rescue practitioners have indicated that there's been unsolicited approaches from the market, right? But what we wanted to do was to do a public call out so that we can assess extensively who has the capacity and that has the appetite to partner with the post office from a digitization perspective, from a warehousing perspective, from even consideration of e-commerce partnerships. My belief is that until it is signed, it is not sealed. So there's been discussions with several partners in the market. And because getting to a final agreement on a contract involves a lot of back and forth, those haven't been finalized, but there are very credible partners in the market who had already, out of their own accord, made approaches either to the department or to the post office through the business rescue practitioners expressing that appetite. But we have to make sure that it is fair, the process is fair, that it is transparent and open to everyone to scrutinize it. That's why our intention is to do that public call out. And I know your concern is primarily about, it has taken time. Going through the channels of those compliance, going through the interactions with DPSA, for instance, in framing that package of partnerships, and ultimately ensuring that it is something that is co-joined, it's co-owned by both the department and the business rescue practitioners, because they currently have the responsibility from a governance perspective and leadership perspective of managing the post office. It's something that we must do together. And we
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Bodlani.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Minister, SAPO was placed under the business rescue practice by the previous administration. And you have touched on this, Minister, but I'm going to ask you to please elaborate on what is the update on the exit of the business rescue practitioners and what plans do you have in place to ensure continuity on the management of SAPO. You'd have spoken that you have put a board, you are close to putting a board in place, and we appreciate that. But there has to be operational leadership at SAPO. Can you take us into confidence in terms of where you are with that process, Minister? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bodlani. Look, starting with the first one, I think the intervention or the route to go through the business rescue option was the right one at the time, because if it wasn't the case, the post office would be liquidated, right? So, and that intervention then meant that in the ensuing period, it was then able to safeguard the life of the post office and keep its operations running. Notwithstanding the branch closures that have happened, notwithstanding the retrenchments that have happened, but those had to happen in order to keep it, running to its bare minimum. Where we are now in terms of the exit of the business rescue practitioners is that they have shared their affidavit with us as the department and the ministry. We've provided feedback on that affidavit because they want to file it with the court so that the court can make a determination on their request to exit. What we are then required, because the pretext to even getting to a business rescue was that we had to equally process this request from the post office through the channels of cabinet, which is what we'll do in the upcoming weeks. What we want to do as the department in preparation to the reality that there will be a day in which the business rescuers leave. We don't want that day to come before we have finalized the appointment of the South African Post Office Board. That is why in the last 2 weeks, we finalized the selection panel to kickstart with the interviewing and the shortlisting process of those. I can't give you the exact time as to when we will finish that because, as I said, there are several dependencies on that. Once the selection panel does its work, it's then the responsibility between the department and the ministry to look at the calibers, what's being recommended to us, provide our feedback there, and if we are satisfied, to take it to cabinet committee first, and then ultimately cabinet. That's when we would have a fully established board. But what we prefer and what we—
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Your time has now expired. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Nchabeleng.
Kwaza Mkondo Kwaza. We welcome our new Chief Whip, Scorpion. Minister, the reality is that the South African Post Office has been left to decay for years, while its competitors have aggressively captured its market share. The decline in revenue and technological obsolescence did not happen overnight. They are the direct results of a decade of negligence as well as failure to adapt. Can you explain to the millions of South Africans who rely on the post office what one single significant and revenue-generating new service the South African Post Office has successfully launched and scaled nationwide in the last 3 years? And if you cannot name one, does this not confirm that your department's approach has been one of reactive crisis management rather than proactive strategy, effectively presiding over the demise of a crucial state asset? Thank you. Gwazam Kondo.
Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much. Honourable Nchabeleng, you have contextualized how we got to where the post office was. The immediate focus is on its survival. And its survival is to safeguard its operations right now to ensure that there is no total wipeout that leads to its closure of branches. When your single obsession is survival, you look at safeguarding what works in that period. And what works has been to make sure that in the areas, primarily the dense areas where communities where I know you come from, right, that people can continue to have access to those service points, because the majority of the population that continues to use the post office now are social grant beneficiaries. And it was to make sure that those operations at the very least work. You are right on the part that the post office in its battle for survival got left by the market. And that is why the focus is these partnerships is to make sure that they are geared towards those areas, particularly in the e-commerce space, in the courier space, which has also been, infested by the retail services that are filled in the market, that the post office can find room to play in that space. It is a highly competitive space that it may need to adapt. And that is why my view and the view of the department is that it can't do it in its current design. It has to be aided by the partnerships that are existing in that market if it does have a chance of adequately providing those services.
Point of order, sir.
Yes, Honourable Member, what's your point of order?
The Minister didn't answer the question. We wanted to know one single service for revenue generating.
No, Honourable Member, thank you. The Minister did answer in your view, and maybe the public will even share it. Maybe he didn't answer sufficiently, but that's not a point of order. The last supplementary question, yes, Honourable Molefe. Is that a new point of order? I dealt with the previous one.
No, but the Minister was totally irrelevant.
Honourable Molefe, we're not going to have that. I've dealt with that point of order. We're moving on. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ngubese.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm no minister that.
Honourable Ngubese, please just take your seat. Honourable member, unless it's a new point of order, I'm not going to entertain a rehash of the previous one.
It's a new point of order, Chair.
Yes, let me hear.
Chair, we did raise these things as well in Chief Whip's forum, where you're sitting here and the public is waiting to hear, because these questions were given by the public. We're not asking them for ourselves.
Yeah.
We're asking a certain question, and you can hear when you're sitting here, Honorable Chair, that no, it's not actually the question that you are asked. The minister is going in the east, and the question is going.
Yeah, now, Honourable Member, you are, as a matter of fact, repeating the previous point of order. Please don't do that. Honourable Ngubesi, my apologies to you. Please continue.
Apology accepted. Thank you so much, Honourable Minister. I know a similar question has been asked before me, but I wanted to just repeat it again so that we get a clear answer on that. Considering that South African Post Office's role as a critical channel for social grant distribution and small business logistics, what steps are you being taken to strengthen and collaborate with other state entities such as SASSA and SELDA to transform South African post office branches into integrated community services centers rather than standalone, underutilized facilities, please?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. You would have been aware that prior to the post bank being separated from the post office, part of the arrangement of recapitalizing the post bank was the SASSA contract being placed in there. And that is why to this day and age, you can find social grant beneficiaries being able to access their social grants and save their monies with the post bank. And that was the one intervention that the previous administration made in order to keep the institution, but to get closer to the most vulnerable members of society who have direct access point in their communities. The reality is all of these ideas that everyone wants the post office to be can only be enabled by an injection of capital into it. And that injection of capital into it means an investment into its digital infrastructure so that it offers much more than it currently offers. And that is equally dependent on the prioritization of the allocation of funds, which is not something that we do, but also that Treasury, in order for it to satisfy itself that you are investing in the right place and you are planning in the right direction, we need to showcase that. What we are saying to you is that the last few years, those efforts have been constrained by trying to get out of a business rescue and save it. And it is why we are going to market to these partnerships on these different areas of services that may help sustain the longevity of the post office by being much more adaptive to the demands of the digital and postal and courier services market.
Thank you. Honourable members, question number 1138 has been asked by the Honourable Bodlani to the Minister of Communication and Digital Technologies. The question is, given that the South African Police Service have announced that they will implement the newly introduced policy of his department that does not confine government departments to procure information technology services from the State Information Technology Agency only, but from other service providers as well, which other government departments have expressed interest in procuring IT services from other service providers besides CETA, and what notable improvements in government services have been experienced after the specified policy was introduced? The Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much, House Chair. So I'll preface that with how we got to issuing the regulation, that Regulation 17, which was to provide a pathway for government departments to have the choice to procure outside of CETA if they were able to present through a very credible business case that they can procure outside of it at a quicker turnaround time, at a lower cost, as I said, in response to the question from Honorable Matafa, but also in showcasing that, one, those needs can then be addressed. That was sparked by the fact that when the government of national unity was pushed, and I think this predates this because several of my colleagues in cabinet had been writing even to previous ministers trying to seek exemptions. And the problem with exemptions is that they are at the discretion of whoever is the minister at that time. And we wanted to put a credible pathway through the regulation, and it doesn't leave the power to a ministerial intervention to determine whether the Department of Police or the Department of Justice can procure elsewhere. Before we did that, we issued the draft regulation as we are forced by the law to all the executive authorities, including the provincial governments. The reception we got was in support of that. But we had to take another step, which is to get the concurrence of the Minister of Finance, who graciously offered that concurrence. Upon so doing, right, it is now then the responsibility of the very same departments that had these frustrations to have this choice to exercise it. We haven't as yet done a scientific measure of what value has that choice given this department. But the anecdotal experience that I would share with you is that from the ministry side, since the application of the regulation, we have received no letters from any other minister wanting to seek an exemption from CETA. I can't speak out of cabinet, but the members of the executive know. They know their slogan about the entity. And I'll be in defiance of my oath if I share that. But the reality is that they now have an avenue that they seem very comfortable with. And to make this point, because it is important to deal with it, because it often gets inferred, particularly interactions with the portfolio committee, that somehow this move is an attempt to emasculate the State Information Technology Agency. It is not. It is to enable government to always have the choice at different times in trying to meet the digital transformation goals that we have, that it has the flexibility to do that. That does not mean people can act outside of the requirements of the PFMA or any other legislation that governs how government procures its services, and it accounts for that. Thank you.
Honorable Botlani, you may ask the first supplementary question.
Thank you so much, House Chairperson. Minister, thank you for telling us the truth about this new regulation. And indeed, Minister, it was a progressive move on your part, and we do welcome that. However, Minister, one of the chronic issues that CETA is impacted by is the leadership instability. And as an institution, Minister, an immediate and urgent intervention is needed. When will CETA have a permanent board, a permanent managing director to ensure stability of CETA and to inspire confidence in the organization?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. With regards to when will we have an acting MD, not an acting, a permanent MD for CETA, including a permanent board. I think we are now at the final stage of, formalizing the last steps of that appointment. And I always hesitate to mention this point, Honorable Bodani, so that you don't then say, but you said something else and then a different version occurred. The board conducts the interviews of the managing director and ultimately makes a recommendation to the minister. The minister takes that recommendation, assesses it, and if he agrees with it, will then communicate to the board. But in order for that to take effect, it must then still go to cabinet committee. It must then still go to cabinet for cabinet's concurrence. And until all of those steps have been ticked, to give a definitive timeline would be misleading. But it's a matter that you would recall that even based on the emphasis that the committee gave us, that it's something that we want to conclude by this financial year. And I'm confident that we would conclude both in terms of the appointment of the managing director and the new board that will then take over in this. There was a reason why we had to have an interim board, as you would recall that the previous board, we had to reinstate them to serve the remainder of their term. That then lapsed. And because by the time it lapsed, there hadn't been a process triggered to get a new board. We didn't want to do an extension of the very same people whose term has lapsed, particularly because that relationship had broken down, to be frank. So we had to put in an interim board so that the organization has leadership that can steer it towards permanent leadership, which is where we feel confident that we will now be able to tick those two key developments before the end of the financial year.
The second follow-up question will be asked by the Honourable Mngwagwa.
Minister, taking into account the policy shifts that now allows departments to bypass certain procurement items, what is the strategy your department developed to fundamentally reform SETA, making it a competitive and preferred service provider again?
Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much. Honourable Mngwagwa would be aware of the fact that the department had started doing an exercise of repurposing what SETA's function should be. And part of that means that we have to look in terms of the current capabilities, what can remain within SETA's doing, and where can we get some form of flexibility in making sure that we intervene in the right direction for not only government department, but for the entirety of government to be able to meet its digital needs. You would know that the digital transformation roadmap, which is located within the digital services unit in the presidency, is looking at a coordinated approach towards tackling digital transformation in the state. The key element in here is that we need to position government to be able to respond rapidly to the changes and the evolutions that are happening in the sector, to have the ability to meet their needs. Secondly, is to deal with this misconception of bypassing. There is no bypassing. Ultimately, when a department wants to procure those services, it approaches SETA to say that these are our needs. This is our business case. Are you able to meet this within your own timeframes that you have stipulated? And if the department is of the view that based on the interaction that it has with SETA, that those can be met, that shouldn't be the discretion of SETA, because it will be a referee in a process that impacts its own capacity to deliver. We are saying that that department should then have the leeway to be able to secure those services in the interest of making sure that there is no interruption of service, in the interest of making sure that government doesn't find itself in situations where there is overposting, because that is another reality that frustrates government departments. And we have to look at what is in the best interest of everyone in the ecosystem to make sure that—
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you.
The next follow-up will be asked by the Honourable Diale.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, what has been the expenditure of South African Police Services over the past 5 years on IT services, and which service providers were utilized for these purposes, and how much have they been paid over the past 5 years? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
House Chair, that is a very, very specific question. I do not have those facts with me right now. What we'll commit to is to source those figures so that we can feed you the accurate facts. I don't want to speculate on the size of that business. I don't have those facts with me right now.
The last supplementary question has been allocated to the Honourable Ghana.
I can some much done. All of them. Whilst this particular move is welcome, a number of government departments have suffered data breaches. So there are people that are getting access to the information that belongs to the government of South Africa. So in this particular move, where now departments are going to procure IT services for themselves, how will the data and the information of government be secured in that instance?
Honourable Minister.
And Kansas Nene for Honorable Ghana. Look, our view is that within the law enforcement capacities of the state, right, and the instruments that are available, and also within the specs on the contracts that governments, departments want to accrue, there's very clear guidelines in terms of the location of data, in terms of the protection of sensitive government data and the sovereignty of that data. It does not give government departments the exclusive right to auction off government data. I think it's very clear, but there's also another key important point that there are what are called mandatory services and non-mandatory services. The mandatory services are around particular and specific information that touches, for instance, in terms of the data that is in the hands of the state security services, for instance. That should always be guided to make sure that there is no risk of that interfacing with, external threats. The reality is that government departments should also be able to, within government, and so whether be it state security, there is sufficient interventions to respond to threats when they happen. You have a technology background, you know that the efforts to either hack systems or penetrate those, it's a permanent obsession or permanent profession for people. So it's about putting enough guardrails in place to minimize that threat and making sure that whenever it occurs, because there will be instances that it occurs, there is sufficient response so that you limit the threat of a permanent damage existing. But there is no perfect solution to say that, do you have enough in the contracts that are in place, or do you have enough arsenal in terms of your resources in the state to prevent a situation where there can never be an attack or where there can never be the risk of a possible disruption in that? Thank you.
Honourable members, question number 1166 has been asked by the Honourable Ntshabeleng to the Minister of Electricity and Energy. The question is about what percentage of electricity generation is currently controlled by private independent power producers compared to 5 years ago, and what are the full details of risk assessments that were conducted regarding Eskom's long-term financial viability under increased private wheeling, trading platforms, and third-party access to public transmission infrastructure. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you to Honourable Crown Prince Ntshabeleng for the question. Maybe just to make the point that the IPP program is a state-initiated and led programmatic intervention that has, amongst others, 3 primary objectives. The first one is to ensure that we introduce a competition on the generation side so that we are able to de-risk ourselves from the monopoly of Eskom and therefore over-reliance on one entity, and once it fails to deliver, then it takes with it the economy of the country as we experienced during load shedding. The second one is to ensure that there's a structural tampering with the energy mix in the country. We are beginning to green the mix so that there's some degree of decarbonization so that we are able to reduce the share of fossil fuels as part of the energy mix. And then the third one is to tap into the liquidity of the private sector to help us to build this infrastructure project that is focused on electricity. And as a result of that, we have seen an insatiable appetite of private sector since the inception of the program. There's been considerable investments. By 2020, the installed capacity from the independent power producers was sitting at 5,206 megawatts, and the nominal generating capacity of Eskom was at 45,117 megawatts, which places the share of private sector generated electricity at 10.3% of the total mix. And then by 2025 March, the nominal generation capacity of Eskom was at 46,886 megawatts, and that of private sector was at 7,495 megawatts. There's a delta there of 2,289 of private sector generated capacity relative to 2020. So that's the kind of improvement that we have seen, and that constituted about 13.8% of the total generation capacity. The introduction of reforms is not a threat to ESCOM's existence. The issues around the wheeling, the trading platforms, the introduction of traders, all that it does is to ensure that there's a healthy competition. Like I said, the end consumer now has got choices where you get your electricity from, and that can only help in ensuring that there's greater investments, there's innovation, and as a result of competition, then hopefully, theoretically, should result in the abatement of exponential tariff increases. And I must say that the ESCOM has conducted a risk assessment that tries to understand, if you like, the cost structure of the tariff and understanding also what that tariff structure means to its business going forward. If you were to ask me, the single biggest existential threat to ESCOM is not competition, but the issues of the municipal data side. So competition is healthy. So ESCOM must accept the new reality. ESCOM is more competent, the best outfit on the continent to respond to this competition. We have embraced it, and I'm more than confident that ESCOM will decimate anyone that comes in its wake because of this competition. And the state can, and the country relies on an ESCOM that is an efficient electricity provider. And ESCOM is a battery of the country. There's no private generator who will develop a project just to provide for the poor, but ESCOM is in a position to do that. So it's a great equalizer, so we welcome competition.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Nchabeleng, your follow-up.
Kwaza Mkondo Kwaza. Gogo Gwede no Gogo Enoch Dumela. Minister, regarding the smart meters rollout program by ESCOM and who are the service providers, who won the tender to supply smart and prepaid ESCOM meters? And who are the companies that are currently contracted to supply ESCOM with prepaid meters, and the companies that are the wholesalers currently licensed to sell prepaid electricity on behalf of ESCOM? What percentage of them are Black, women, youth, and disabled persons owned? Dumela.
Honourable Nchabeleng, thank you. Before I hand over to the Minister, let me just say, remember, time stands still for no one. Honourable Minister.
No, I think, I mean, as a follow-up question, the detailed nature of the question is such that I'm unable to offer that answer to a competent answer to the House. Otherwise, I'll be misleading the House. So I do volunteer to submit it to you in writing. In fact, you should be exceptionally worried when I get into the procurement space and I start to rattle out who's doing what, who's doing the other, is just to undermine that procurement. So that discipline is important. And the fact that I can't offer you a response now is a confidence on the ability of the shareholder, the executive, not to interfere with that process. I think that's important. Thanks.
The next follow-up has been awarded to the Honourable Milam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, I hope you're having a good day. So, Minister, noting that generation share from independent power producers has increased significantly over the past decade, and that ESCOM's financial viability is, well, questionable, given its high debt burden and growing municipal debt, especially from ANC-run municipalities, is the IRP 2025 not, in fact, an admission that the state has no real short-term solution for the next decade, and that for that time frame, South Africa's only hope for new generation is the private sector? In fact, isn't that exactly what you told the Portfolio Committee yesterday when you admitted that not a single cent of government funding would go towards new generation capacity in terms of IRP 2025?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mayhem. Oh, it's a paradox what you are articulating. What is that paradox? What the IRP does, it presents two horizons. So our electricity plan, in short, it says that the first horizon is between now and 2030, and it says we'll get 11.9 megawatts of new generation capacity from solar PV 8.9 megawatts will come from wind, and 6 gigawatts will come from gas to power. And then we also compute the next horizon, 2030 to 2045. So that's a long-term plan. And then we also make the point that in the immediate, what keeps these lights on is ESCOM. So we had to focus on ensuring that we improve the performance of the installed fleet. When I was appointed, when everyone was ridiculing the president, why do you need the Minister of Electricity? The EAF was sitting at 48%. Now, 2 years after the appointment of the Minister of Electricity, is at 71%. Guess who's eating humble pie? It's exactly that. And then we have a new problem. That new problem is over generation, and then we're able to use that as a lever to restart the South African economy, and that's why we are talking to the smelters. So there is no truth in that the state will be retrenched. All that we're doing is that ensure that there's diversity in the mix and introduce new players. It's our policy to say that the private sector has got a role to play. We're moving away from a monopoly to competition, and this can only augur well for the economy of the country. So we are on the right track.
Honorable Boshoff, you may ask the next supplementary.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Minister. I think if we look at the nature of electricity generation, which is predominantly moving in the direction of decentralization and smaller scale, do you suspect that we might reach a time that ESCOM is rather a kind of a social company providing electricity to those who can't afford to provide their own, rather than a commercial operation, or don't you think we'll reach that stage?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Boshoff. I think it's going to play both. So you need a backstop that is going to ensure that when everything fails, you have someone to protect the interest of the South African economy from an electricity point of view, the generation capacity that is. So what ESCOM is doing now, we're introducing ESCOM Green, so we understand that the profile of generation has changed. We need to exploit our renewable energy and endowments. We have those in abundance. So what ESCOM Green will do is going to compete, if you like, the new generation capacity on what is classified as green. If you had to go to any major energy consumer in the country, typically this will be your big industries, your mines, your smelters. If you had to ask them, whom do you prefer to provide you with electricity? Private sector developer, generator, Ramokopa, or ESCOM, with their eyes closed, they'll say ESCOM. ESCOM has got 100 years of experience. ESCOM has got the highest density of the most qualified, competent, and patriotic engineers. ESCOM has developed patents over a long time. ESCOM understands the entire value chain of electricity generation. It takes an extraordinary long amount of time for anyone to come and claim to understand what the space looks like. If you go to the private generators, I can tell you with my eyes closed, you'll always find someone who has previously been associated with ESCOM. ESCOM is the engine of this country. ESCOM is going to provide social protection for the poor, and then ESCOM is going to ensure that it catalyzes the South African economy. So Honorable Boshoff, it's all of the above.
Honorable Thring, you may ask the last supplementary question.
Thank you. Minister, it is an open secret that ESCOM is a shadow of its former self for all the wrong reasons. And while there have been some notable improvements under your helm, more and more customers are shifting to private generation. So, Minister, in assessing the risks to ESCOM's viability over the increased private wheeling, trading platforms, and third-party access to public transmission infrastructure, does your department have considered concrete plans to, one, embrace, and two, leverage the shift to private generation while mitigating risks and improving the long-term financial viability of ESCOM in order to remain a viable player in the evolving energy landscape? If yes, please share some of the details. If not, why not? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Chair, thank you, Honorable Thring. We We've just computed what we call the critical mineral strategy and try to understand, in the course of adopting that strategy, understand what are the minerals of the future. That is, those minerals that are going to support the decarbonization agenda. The Boston Group has done a study that shows that the minerals that are going to support decarbonization, so the demand side of the decarbonization is such that it's not matched by the supply side. So there's a delta deficit of 20% of the minerals that are going to drive the decarbonization agenda. Those minerals are found on the continent. A great majority of them are found in SADC, and they will require two things for us to exploit them. They'll require electricity and water. So in answering your question, Eskom is repositioning itself not as only a domestic supplier of electricity to South Africa. Allow the traders to do what they are doing here. I think we are going to look north, and we are going to support and undergird the growth of Zambia, the growth of Mozambique, you mentioned them, Zimbabwe, because the transmission lines exist. We've got sufficient capacity. We are growing that to 152 gigawatts in the next 15 years or so. The South African economy, irrespective of its rate of growth, GDP growth, will not be able to absorb that kind of additional capacity. So Eskom must look north. So we welcome competition. So there is no contradiction between the proliferation of private sector participants in any form, including traders and new generation capacity, and Eskom's long-term future. Eskom has turned the corner. Yes, you are right. We come from a difficult past, registered the 16 billion rand profit after tax. You will see it's going to grow, and not on the back of tariffs increases on. You'll see that the primary driver is that it's becoming more and more efficient and getting better at negotiating these contracts going into the
Thank
future.
you, Minister.
The future of Eskom is guaranteed. Thanks, Chair.
Honourable members, question number 1097 has been asked by the Honourable Nkopane to the Minister of Employment and Labour. The question is about the underlying systemic governance and internal control failures that have perpetuated entrenched disclaimer audit opinions for both the Unemployment Fund and Compensation Fund over many years, despite their major role in providing social security and employment benefits to millions of vulnerable workers, and the reasons that there has been a notable silence and or inaction from the leadership and oversight structures from her department in addressing the persistent uncertainties. The Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, and thanks for the question. Chair, it's a reality that the two funds plays a very strategic role in the lives of workers in this country. But again, we have to accept that they are very challenging. They are very challenged. There is a lot of work that needs to be done to make them work in a manner that is expected in the country. But it's the compensation fund that received the disclaimer and will be focusing on the compensation fund. The Auditor General Chair has highlighted several key findings that have contributed to the persistent disclaimer audits opinions for the compensation fund. And these findings include inadequate record keeping and data integrity. The lack of comprehensive and accurate records has compromised the reliability of financial information, ineffective internal control environment. Existing internal controls have not been sufficient to safeguard assets or ensure proper financial management. Inadequate information technology controls with deficiencies in IT systems have led to vulnerabilities such as intercepted payments and unreliable data processing. Honourable Chair, the recurring audit disclaimers are largely attributed to several underlying systemic governance and internal control failures. These includes the unavailability of historical accounting records related to benefit paid and revenue collected, which impedes accurate financial reporting. Weak internal controls with ICT processes, particularly those affecting the interception of processing of payments. The absence of readily available audited financial statements for unlisted investments, which further complicates the audit processes and financial transparencies. The Minister, Chair, currently is actively working to reinforce and stabilize the leadership of the fund by addressing vacancies of senior management level. This process includes filling of key positions and ensuring that management is held accountable for their responsibilities. Accountability is further promoted through in-year monitoring processes that track the implementation of action plans, as well as both financial and non-financial performance reporting. In addition, the audit committee, who reports to the acting DG and minister, plays a pivotal role in overseeing the progress of the audit action plan. It conducts monthly review on the audit action plan to ensure that funds management is diligently implementing the prescribed actions outlined in the plans. The audit committee continue together with management to ensure implementation of the following actions. Comprehensive data cleansing initiatives are being implemented to improve the accuracy and reliability of information within fund systems. Key financial processes are being automated and robust audit trails are being established. These measures aim to minimize manual errors, enhance traceability throughout all financial transactions in the funds. The capacity of the Internal Controls Directorate is being reinforced to ensure active monitoring, evaluation, and enforcement of implementation of controls activities. The Internal Control Directorate is now better equipped to investigate instances of financial misconduct and enforce appropriate disciplinary actions. Furthermore, a financial misconduct plan has been developed and is currently being implemented, complete with due dates to address all outstanding historical cases in the funds. I must say, Honorable Chair, that there is a lot of work that we are currently seized with in trying to change the face of this fund, and we are putting quite a number of capacity and internal controls that are going to assist the funds to be changed to a better fund. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Honorable Nkopane, your follow-up.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. What specific measures or reforms have been proposed or implemented to address these systemic governance and internal control deficiencies in both funds? Will the implementation of the audit plan resolve those issues, and what barriers have hindered the effective execution and oversight? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. We strongly believe that the implementation of this plan will definitely turn around the situation in the fund. Implementation of audit action plan during the first semester of the 2025 financial year, Chair, the compensation fund implemented a number of targeted measures to enhance its internal control environment and also reduce recurrence of audit findings. On general controls, environment improvements, to ensure consistent progress, management of the compensation fund established a structured system for evaluating the implementation of the audit action plan that we are currently implementing. Feedback on the plan execution is scrutinized every 2 weeks rigorously all the time. Capacity building and addressing the backlogs that are existing in the fund. The fund has prioritized strengthening its accounting, financial, and internal controls functions across various directorates within the fund. This involves equipping these areas with necessary skills to address pre-existing backlogs of ineffective controls and rectify accounting records that had been affected by prior period. On interim financial reporting, as an added measure, the compensation fund is instituted the preparation of interim financial statements as at 30th of September 2025. And in enhancement in payment processes, we are busy working towards mitigating the risk of erroneous payments that have been rife in the fund. The fund's payment procedures now incorporate the account verification at the point of final fund release. This mechanism is designed to detect and prevent the payments to incorrect beneficiaries. And this is going to change the face of the fund. Thank you very much,
Minister. Honorable Bagram, you may ask the next supplementary question.
Deputy Minister, the disgusting audit failure for both the UIF and the Compensation Fund has been constant for over a decade. We keep hearing the same answers from you and your predecessors. It appears that not only are the systems hopeless, but the staff managing the systems are either unable to manage or refuse to manage. We now have both these entities ring-fenced and reporting separately directly to the department. However, the same staff members remain and the same systems are reflecting the failure. Why don't you engage with the private sector who could run claims and payouts properly without delay and without theft? Thank you, Minister.
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the question. Chair, we do acknowledge that the challenges have been recurring for quite some time, but as we have explained to the House how we are envisaging turning around the situation, I think the turnaround plan that we are implementing is going to change the current situation. But also, as I've said, the filling of key positions, in particular at a senior level, is going to change how the fund has been operating. We are bringing in capable leadership in the fund, but also we are making sure that the issue of capacity building within the current employees that we are having is also being attended to. The systems, as I've said, we've identified the ICT system as one of the biggest challenge. We have implemented the biometric system now, which is fully being used in all our labor centers, starting from the labor center up until the highest office. No transaction is done without the biometric system being engaged, which is changing. Literally, we have observed that there is a greater change. There is a lot of accountability. So we are closing all the leaks and the loopholes that have been there. There is going to be a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable Mtetwa, you may ask the next supplementary question.
Minister, you've rightly outlined the root cause of the instability at the compensation fund and an unemployment insurance fund, namely systemic governance failures, IT weaknesses, and a culture of impunity regarding the Auditor General's recommendations. Furthermore, you have detailed the recovery strategy for the 1.7 billion, which relies heavily on the work of the SIU and law enforcement. My follow-up questions in twofold, focusing on accountability and proactive prevention. Given that the lack of consequences for officials is the root cause, what specific time-bound disciplinary actions have been taken internally against managers and officials, including those at a senior level, who failed to implement the Auditor General recommendations or who presided over the control failures that allowed these 1.7 billion to be stolen? Furthermore, beyond relying on SIU to follow the money, what tangible system-wide control have you implemented to ensure that a syndicate
Thank you, Honourable Mtetwa.
a new loophole?
Your time has now expired.
Thank you.
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Let me not deal with the figure of 1.7 billion. Let me deal with the issue of theft in the fund, but also the challenges that we have seen and issues of consequence management. Currently, the fund, what we are implementing is we have established the Anti-Corruption and Integrity Management Directorate, which we call it ASIM. This directorate is dedicated to investigating all fraudulent transactions and operations within the fund. The ASIM Directorate is staffed with permanently appointed qualified forensic investigators and engages external investigators appointed through procurement to strengthen the investigative capacity within the fund. Furthermore, the ASIM Directorate has formed a strategic partnership with key stakeholders at the Fusion Center. This collaborative effort includes working closely with the National Prosecuting Authority, the Asset Forfeiture Unit, and other relevant entities. The primary objective of this partnership is to proactively address and prevent fraud within the compensation fund. The investigative report produced by the ASIM Directorate play a crucial role in enabling the compensation fund to prosecute individuals implicated in fraudulent activities. In addition, these reports guide the implementation of operational controls As a direct outcome of the strengthened anti-fraud initiatives and ongoing investigations led by ASIM Directorate, the Compensation Fund has made significant progress in tackling fraudulent activities. Notably, in September 2025, the fund secured successful prosecution against 9 individuals, some of whom were former employees. These individuals were found guilty of fraud and subsequently sentenced, underscoring the effectiveness of the fund's current approach to fraud prevention and enforcement. We are dealing with corruption and we are
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair.
The last opportunity belongs to the Honourable Nkobo.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Thank you, Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, as the department conducted lifestyle audits on senior officials and leadership responsible for managing the Unemployment Insurance Fund and Compensation Fund, and if not, what measures are being taken to ensure accountability and detect possible conflicts of interest or corruption among those entrusted with oversight of these funds? Deputy Minister, thank you.
Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the question. We haven't done any lifestyle audit regarding the senior officials within the 2 funds, Chair. That's why we have established such directorates that you see in the Compensation Fund, because we believe we need to deal with what has been happening. While it's a great suggestion that is being suggested to conduct a lifestyle audit. It can be looked at, but we haven't done it. But further to that, we are strengthening the consequence management, the effectiveness of consequence management within the 2 funds is being amplified, and quite a number of cases of fraud are being fast-tracked. That's why I raised earlier on what we have done regarding the establishment of the ASIM, which literally is assisting in the Compensation Fund. But further, with the UIF, is the same story. We are working with quite a number of law enforcement agencies. You have seen in the past few months where quite a number of syndicates have been exposed in the UIF, and a number of our own employees and outsiders have been arrested, and we have been able also to get back the money that has been stolen, but some have been sentenced in longer years. So there's quite a lot of work that is being done, and we're closely looking at that work that is being done by the funds, both of them. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, question number 1116 has been asked by the Honourable Ntlangwini to the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources. The question is about the reasons that there has been no serious attempt by his department and the private sector to retrieve the bodies of Priti Nkambule, Solomon Nyirenda, and Yvonne Nisi, who were buried alive when the container office they were in was buried at the Lily Mine in Mpumalanga 9 years ago, leaving their families with gaping wounds of grief. The Honourable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Speaker, members. You know, one of the issues is an allegation that you are not serious. It always happens when you are not involved and you are doing oversight. Oversight gives you a right to be critical. The reality of the matter is that legal powers of our department are limited when it comes to business rescue processes, because business rescue practitioners do not fall in our department. They fall in another ministry, and therefore we don't have direct authority over them. So therefore we continue to engage them. We engage interested parties, we engage affected parties for solutions. That is the best interest of the family and all those affected. In this regard, we have also held various meetings. First of all, with Vantage Gold, which was the owner of the mine when the accident happened. At one point, they declared that they will have the money, they will reopen the mine, and they went to the business rescue practitioner committed to bring the money from Australia. We gave them time, and it became clear that they had no money. We went back to the business rescue practitioner who brought another investor from China, said, these have money, they have guarantees, we'll give you the money. We gave them space. That money did not materialize. 2 weeks ago, the court has given the business rescue practitioner a leeway to actually open up for investment in Lily Mine. That is Lily and Babruk. Those are two gold mining companies. And we're hoping that they will attract investors because the price of gold is above 4,000 Rand an ounce. And we're hoping that it will. So it is not lack of seriousness. It is the question of trying to get an investor so that it's not only retrieving the bodies, it's also opening the mine for operations. And the reason for that is that you need economic activity in that area. That is the biggest problem there. If you go there, poverty is in the face of people. So you must open the mine, make it work, and retrieve the bodies. That is where we are now. So business rescue practitioners are not under our jurisdiction. We engage with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable members, in terms of Rule 137.10a, the Honourable Mayola will take charge of the follow-up.
Thank you. Minister, regarding this matter, it's almost been 9 years now. Is it the view of the department that the bodies of these people must remain buried in that mine forever? Or, Minister, would that still be the view if those who were buried alive there were big owners of businesses or one of your senior politicians in this country? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Mine disasters happen in the mining industry all the time. And one of the issues that I'm trying to explain to the House all the time is that most of the time, capital make billions and billions of rand on mining. But when there's a disaster, there's a temptation to take a shortcut and want the state to take over the responsibility of a disaster. And our view is that capital must take responsibility for the disaster in an operation where they made money. That would be our attitude, whether it was big business or it was a big politician, that if a mining company has a disaster, capital must take responsibility for a disaster. If that was not the case, I can tell you now, the state will be taken for a ride everywhere. I've been in the mining industry for some time. I witnessed the Kinross disaster. The state refused to take responsibility. Jango took responsibility. I witnessed the Valrift disaster. Anglo took the responsibility. I witnessed the Sendelina disaster. Jango took the responsibility. And that is a trend that is there. Capital, invest, make money, and when there's a disaster, they must take responsibility. If this House says to me, we are giving you money, we're voting for this budget, talk to the Minister of Finance, go and retrieve those bodies, we'll do that. But the reality of the matter is that big business make money on the mines, but when there's a disaster, they expect state to take responsibility.
Honourable Mofokeng, you may ask the next follow-up. Oh, Honourable Hassan, please continue.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Minister, thank you for that response, and I think outlining the role that private sector has, not just in making money through the extraction of minerals, but taking responsibility where difficulty and crisis has occurred. Minister, the follow-up question relates to the department and how you will ensure as the department that in line with the court decisions, that the business rescue process is concluded, especially given some of those challenges you outlined initially around the poverty in the area, but also to ensure a safe recovery plan is executed, practically reducing the delays and giving the families a clear schedule and point of accountability. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Let me repeat this point. Business rescue practitioners do not fall under our department. If they did, there are few that I would have fired. Including the optimum one, including another one in all other mines. But I don't have that authority. What we have the right to do is to put pressure on the business rescue practitioner to ensure that they implement solutions to a problem. That is my responsibility. And I'm doing that to the best of my ability. That's why I can tell you that there's been a series of investors who promised to take over Babruk and Lily Mine. And we say, take them over, make money, but take those bodies out. We're not getting that. We're working on that. We're hoping that we'll get a solution sooner. That's why in the last time, I gave a promise because one day said we have money, and only to discover that they don't have the money. But they wanted to have the Section 11 given to them. And our responsibility to say, if you don't have money, we take away your Section 11, we'll give it to a person who will operate the mine and also retrieve those bodies.
Honourable Lorimer, you may ask the next follow-up.
We all want to see the remains of the victims returned to their families. But getting them back will involve risks to the rescuers. Just after the accident, rescuers dug frantically to try and retrieve the container. Just before they got there was another collapse. The decision was made to withdraw them, which was a good decision because the collapses continued and even the emergency shaft became unusable. So, Minister, will you make the restart of the mine conditional on rescuing the remains? And if so, at what point, if at any point, will you say the operation is too dangerous to the lives of the rescuers and does not need to happen?
Honourable Minister.
Mining is inherently dangerous. So you cannot stop an operation on the basis of it being dangerous. It's dangerous in any way. That's why I give you a list of disasters that I have witnessed in the mining industry. The biggest was Colebrook, by the way. That is the nature of the industry. Anybody who wants to get a Section 11 in Lily Mine, Babruk, will get that Section 11 on condition that they retrieve those bodies. That will be a condition. And we've repeated to all of them that if they say they want to operate a mine, but they can't take the bodies, we don't give them Section 11. That's how it works.
Honourable Trollip, you may ask the last follow-up. Oh, not Honourable Trollip.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Honourable Minister, I really am glad that you are saying that you're open to the retrieval of the bodies. Action SA President Herman Mashaba has written to you, your office, and the office of President Ramaphosa to facilitate the retrieval of these bodies. Why have we still not received a response and a commitment from your department? If not, when can we expect a response in this regard?
Honourable Minister.
The problem with a letter written to me or the president by Mr. Mashaba is an assumption that the state must take responsibility from capital. No. Now you ask a question and now you're howling. Why do you do that? Remain cool, remain cool. Remain cool. All we're saying is that we will insist on capital retrieving those bodies and operate the mine. We're insisting on that. And the reason for that is very simple. Those two mines have good deposits of gold. And therefore, we're insisting that anybody want to go to Lily Mine and Babrook, I give you both. That person must take the full responsibility of reopening the mine. And that's it.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes this oral question session. Outstanding replies will be printed in the Hansard. Members are requested to stand and remain standing until the presiding officer has left. That concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned.